Another one of the biggest myths that men believe is that I can change her. And it's a huge myth and misconception, because oftentimes we have the ability to change us, but we don't do it. And so the mindset that you're going to change someone else is very controlling and manipulative, and is not the way that we should go if we are going to pursue marriage. Furthermore, that if they did change because of you, that they won't resent that they feel like they can't be who they are supposed to be, because they're so worried about being who you want them to be. What's up, family? We're back at Preparing Men for Marriage, and we've got another jam-packed video here for you today, where we will be discussing the biggest myths that men believe about marriage. Before we jump into the video, I just want to ask that you consider subscribing to our YouTube channel. If marriage advice and preparing for marriage interests you, share this out to someone you think could get value from it. Make sure that you share, like, subscribe, turn on those bell notifications so you don't miss a thing. That being said, hey, listen, let's dive right into this episode. All right. Again, we're talking about some of the biggest myths that men believe about marriage. Number one, love is enough to make a marriage work. This is life, and unfortunately, some of us have endured divorce. I've been there. And if you've ever gone through a divorce, 9 times out of 10, you loved that person. They loved you. Somehow you still ended up in divorce. One of the biggest things when it comes to this is, if you pick the wrong person from the start, it's going to be very tough. It's not going to matter how much you love the person, because you guys were not aligned properly. Some people say in the church, we might even say unequally yoked. But it's not just unequally yoked. If that was not your person, the love could be there, but you guys might not have, when we say aligned, your purposes are not aligned. We have to consider that when we say that love, we love each other. It's got to be a little more than that. And I'll give you this to kind of encourage you in. You do need love. You cannot have a solid foundation in a marriage without love. It's also hard work that both parties have to be willing to participate in. And again, having a purpose where you two can share goes a long ways. So love is not enough to sustain a marriage. Another one of the biggest myths that men believe about marriage is that sex will always be like the honeymoon. If you've been married, and when you get married, you'll realize you're going to have to be very intentional about sex as time goes. Why? Many of us have jobs where we work very hard on. Some of us, bare minimum is 40 hours, okay? So there's fatigue that's involved. There's just so many different things that you may want to do. And before you know it, the day has gone along and you have not been intentional about being intimate with your spouse. Let's not even talk about if you have children, whether you've brought children to the relationship, whether children existed before marriage. In that scenario, or if you have children after marriage, either way, children have a way of making us have to be creative and intentional about intimacy with our spouse after marriage. I'll also say this. Another myth that men believe about marriage is that sex stops once you get married. Again, I go back to the same point. We have to get out of the mindset that marriage is an automatic engine. Okay, turn it on and it's good to go for a lifetime. Without you being intentional, the lack of intentionality can cause for sex to stop in a marriage. The lack of intentionality will also cause for you to not pay attention to intimacy, because there's other things that have distracted you and gotten in the way of it. The monotony of life, the endeavors that we have that sometimes we put before our spouse. Okay, so it's not true that sex stops once you get married, but it's also not true that sex is going to be like the honeymoon per se. That all depends how intentional you are about it. So, as a pastor once told me, keep it fresh. Another big myth that men believe about marriage is that I will lose my freedom. Now, I'm real heavy on marrying the right person. And when you marry the right person, it's more about what you gain as opposed to what you lose. When I say that, I just simply mean we have to change our mindset. Okay, maybe you're not able to hang out with the fellas like you used to, but you're not a child anymore. You've got responsibility. The biggest responsibility you have is your marriage. And if you don't take care of that marriage, you'll have issues. We've got to be mature enough to realize, hey, I can't be selfish. It's not just about me and what I want to do. I've got at least a wife. Again, if there's children involved, that's another added responsibility. Okay? So it's not about losing your freedom, because again, when you marry the right person, you're being the best version of yourself that you can be because you marry that person, and they're being the best version of themselves because they married you. All right. So again, it's less about what you lose and more about what you gain. But that also goes back to the conversation of, did you marry the right person? Another one of the biggest myths that men believe is happy wife, happy life. I hear people say it all the time, and it disgusts me. Not because I don't want my wife to be happy, but because I know myself solely cannot be responsible for the happiness that my wife feels 24/7. It's too big of an ask for a wife to be responsible for a husband's happiness, and it's too much of a responsibility to ask a husband to be responsible 24/7 for another person's or for your spouse's happiness. I'm not saying that a husband and a wife should not experience happiness in a marriage. What I'm saying is, when you have lifted up happiness as the idol, and you've built your relationship, your marriage, on an emotion, you're going to be in trouble. Because what you also realize is that, look at yourself. There are things that you're not able to figure out about yourself, and sometimes you're not able to tell a person what is bothering you. So if you can't even tell what's bothering you, how can someone outside of you be responsible for what you've got going on between your ears? So I don't believe in happy wife, happy life. However, I do believe this. If you have two people who have made vows and are intentional about serving one another for the rest of their lives, that makes for a happy environment. Another one of the biggest myths that men believe is that divorce is imminent. That is a very fearful mentality, fearful mindset. If you go into the marriage with the idea that you're going to end in divorce, it almost lends to say, why did you get married? What traumas need to be addressed that lead to you feeling that way? I just want to give some encouragement. If you're looking to be married, if you're considering marriage, if you are married, divorce does not have to be your story. I don't care what the statistics say in America. I don't care that 70% of women initiate divorce. We have to stop taking the narrative that society gives us and adopting it. So one of the biggest myths that men believe is that divorce is imminent. On the flip side of that, another one of the biggest myths that men believe about marriage is that divorce won't impact my life. Divorce won't happen to us. And that may seem like it's an oxymoron, because it's the opposite of what I just said. The difference with this is it depends on the people. It depends on context. There are some people who feel like their spouse will never divorce them because of what they have. Their spouse will never divorce them because they come from a two-parent household. Your spouse will never divorce you because, hey, the Bible says that you're not supposed to get a divorce. So since that's the case, you can't leave. And we focus so much on what shouldn't happen, what I don't want to happen, that we don't do the work to try to ensure that it does not happen. So that's one of the biggest myths, that divorce won't happen to us, that you are bulletproof. And I say, come away from the arrogance and do the work to build up your marriage so that you don't have to look down the barrel of a divorce. Another one of the biggest myths that men believe is that marriage will fix my problems. I'll say this much. Who you were before you walk down the aisle is going to be the same person you are after you say I do. If you are unwilling to address those concerns, get those skeletons out of the closet and start addressing them before you meet your person, you have to remember that marriage is a mirror. It will not automatically switch off. If you struggle with sexual addiction in some form of way, sexual perversion, just getting married doesn't fix that. And one of the problems is that we're unwilling to address things, and so we try to mask things. So if I get married, I can hide what I'm afraid to deal with. But what you don't deal with in previous seasons will rear its ugly head in future seasons of your life. You also realize that when you get married, your wife becomes an instant accountability partner. A lot of men think it's being a nag, but it's that instant accountability partner that God knows you need so that you can be the best version of yourself that you need to be. Marriage will not hide anything. It will, in fact, expose things. Another one of the biggest myths that men believe is that I can change her. And it's a huge myth and misconception, because oftentimes we have the ability to change us, but we don't do it. And so the mindset that you're going to change someone else is very controlling and manipulative, and is not the way that we should go if we are going to pursue marriage. It's not about changing someone. You are responsible for yourself, and you're not responsible for the change of someone else. And I'm going to tell you this, even if you think that you have the ability to change someone else, I wouldn't trust it. I wouldn't trust that a change that a person was not willing to make themselves is something that they're going to stick to for the rest of their lives. Furthermore, that if they did change because of you, that they won't resent that they feel like they can't be who they are supposed to be because they're so worried about being who you want them to be. Another one of the biggest myths that men believe is that my money is enough, my financial status is enough to keep her. And I hate to burst your bubble, but you could lose whatever you have today or tomorrow. You could get injured, which impacts your ability to make money at any given time. I always say, if you don't humble yourself, you will be humbled. My last thing, one of the biggest myths that men believe is that good sex will keep her. If your wife was not a virgin, more than likely she found a situation before you that she was sexually pleased with, but notice she's not there anymore. I don't want to dig too deep into that, but the point is that, again, this is another one of those things where, like with the money, like with your loins, your sexual capability, when you put that and make that the idol, the problem you have is, again, health can impact that. Injury can impact that. Age can impact that. So we have to be very careful of what we make as the confidence behind who we are as men, and really get down to really realizing, you know what, I need God more than anything. Anything that I put to the forefront, I need God to go before that. All right. So listen, we've just gone through some of the biggest myths that men believe about marriage. Is there anything that you think I missed and did not cover in this video? Hey, leave it in the comments. Also, while you're at it, you've made it this far, consider subscribing to our YouTube channel. If you got value from this video, or have gotten value out of any of the other videos that I've left, consider subscribing, liking, sharing, turning on your bell notification so that you don't miss a thing. Again, here at this channel, we talk about marriage preparation and we give marriage advice, and we just hope that you'll stick around and that you'll hear something that will prepare you for marriage or gives you marriage advice that will help you in sustaining the marriage that you are currently building. Hey, listen, we'll catch you on the next episode. Take care.